Let's bring in our next guest, Omer Ozkizilcik. He's an analyst at the security department of the SETA Foundation, and he joins us now from Ankara. Omer, good to have you on the show. I want to talk to you about sort of this new Turkish foreign policy that we're seeing, a more proactive approach that is adopted by Turkey. What's behind this, you think?
So first of all, this is a main experience of the last, I would say, 10 to 5 years of Turkish foreign policy, because especially when war in Syria started, Turkey tried to have a diplomatic approach, tried to get international community behind Turkey and to find a humanitarian solution for the civilians, like safe zones, etc. But the realities on the ground show Turkey that only hard power matters in the Middle East, nothing else. And especially with the continuous attempts of the United States of America to withdraw or take less actions in the Middle East, it has become more obvious that regional actors need to use their hard power to achieve anything. And this summit today in Berlin is a quite good textbook example for that, because before the Turkish military cooperation with the Libyan government and the deployment of Turkish troops into Libya and the Turkish support to the UN-based government, the warlord Haftar was not interested in any political solution at all, and this summit would not be possible. But only with the Turkish hard power approach, it became possible. So what Turkey is doing is being on the field, using its military, its hard power, in order to enable a political process, because we have come into a moment where actors like the United Arab Emirates, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Russia are only understanding from this language. They do not seek to find a political solution if they can advance by military means, if they can impose their agenda by military means. So therefore, Turkey has to act by military power, especially when the European Union and the European states are not ready to take responsibility in such conflicts.
You talked about this being a textbook example. I'm wondering if this next example that I'm going to give you would also be a textbook example. And Ivan and I, who was a guest on our Istanbul studio, discussed this previously, the dynamic between Turkey and Russia. And while they are represent and being on different sides of many of these conflicts, they are finding a way for a common cause, which in this case is finding a ceasefire, at least initial ceasefire.
So I would say yes, this puts definitely into the line of the Turkish-Russian approach to each other, because both states have many difficulties and many conflicting sides in many conflicts, like the Crimean conflict, like Ukraine, Syria, and now Libya. But both states have understood that they need to cooperate with each other, because if they work against each other on the entire front and neglect any diplomatic effort, any negotiations, the cost for each side will be so big that it will be a disaster for both sides. So therefore, Turkey and Russia have built up this understanding of compartmentalizing the relationship and talking and negotiation despite the differences, despite the disagreements. So, and this approach is, to my understanding, the approach Turkey also would wish to have with the Americans and the European Union. There can be some disagreements and misunderstandings or differences, but this does not neglect the fact that there needs to be negotiations and there needs to be a continuous talk between the sides. But we so far have seen that the Europeans especially and the Americans still combine each issue with the other and are rejecting negotiation efforts. And here, the Turkish-Russian approach is, to my understanding, the new understanding in the coming years for the entirety of the international community, especially when the unipolar system of the Americans are becoming more weak day by day.
You had said that that the Europeans only start understanding this language after Turkey took particular steps in the Mediterranean. I'm wondering if you would put Germany in this category too, or would you actually place them different to other European countries like France, for instance? What does Germany get out of all this?
So the German approach is quite different than from French approach, the French approach is much different from the European approach because Italy is also not on the board of the French. But here we have to assess that all the German attempts would not be possible if the Turkish army would have not deployed force to Libya and enforced a stalemate on the military terms in Libya. Here, I have to clearly assess that the German approach is different. Germany wants to find a political solution, and that Germany is naturally and due to its foreign policy understanding not much interested in military solutions. But however, here, Germany also wins from the Turkish military approach as this is the main enabler of today's conference. Without Turkey's role, Germany would not be able to hold this conference, and the French approach of supporting a warlord would win in Libya if there wasn't a Turkey.
All right. Omer Ozkizilcik live for us from Ankara. Thank you for joining us here on TRT World as we continue our special coverage looking at the Berlin conference.